That morning, 5,000 sailors stood in formation under the blinding Pacific sun as she faced her public disgrace. No one spoke as the admiral read the charges: insubordination, protocol breach, career death. The metallic rip of her insignia being torn away echoed across the carrier deck. Cameras captured her final salute before she disappeared down the gangway. Then the alarms blared. Sonar detected movement. A massive shadow broke the surface beside the carrier. The nuclear submarine's hatch opened, and suddenly everything changed. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story of hidden honor resonates with you, consider subscribing for more untold military stories. That morning, the entire carrier deck of the USS Intrepid was packed. 5,000 sailors standing in formation under the blinding Pacific sun. The brass lined up on the command platform for what was supposed to be a public reprimand. Commander Thalia Reinhardt stood in the center, her uniform soaked with salt air, eyes forward, as Admiral Hargrove read out the charges against her. "Commander Reinhardt!" The admiral's voice boomed across the PA system, cutting through the sound of waves lapping against the hull. "You stand charged with insubordination, unauthorized command interference, and breach of protocol." Reinhardt didn't argue. She didn't even blink. Her weathered face betrayed nothing as she stood at perfect attention, the classified mission pins on her chest catching occasional glints of sunlight. Several senior officers exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Despite the circumstances, there was something in their eyes that looked almost like respect. The sailors watched in silence. Most had never seen a high-ranking officer disciplined this way. Public reprimands were rare, usually reserved for examples that needed to be made. The cameras from military press captured everything, their operators jostling for the best angle of Commander Reinhardt's disgrace. In accordance with Article 92 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Admiral Hargrove continued, his voice devoid of emotion. "You are hereby stripped of your rank and relieved of duty." Lieutenant Morven Caldwell stepped forward from the line of officers. There was no mistaking the satisfaction in his eyes as he approached Reinhardt. The entire carrier deck fell silent as he reached for the insignia on her chest. The metallic rip echoed across the deck as he tore it away, the sound amplified by the perfect stillness of 5,000 watching sailors. Someone in the formation gasped. Reinhardt's expression never changed. A brief flash of memory hit her. The secure communications room just 3 nights ago, her fingers flying across the keyboard, sending encrypted messages before deliberately destroying the equipment, her own voice echoing in her mind. "If we follow those orders, sir, we're crossing a line we can't uncross." Back in the present, Admiral Hargrove's voice cut through her thoughts. "Commander Reinhardt, you are hereby ordered to be escorted off this ship. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Reinhardt finally spoke, her voice clear and steady. "No, sir." "Very well. This concludes the proceedings." Reinhardt offered one final, perfect salute. The Admiral returned it, something flickering behind his eyes that might have been regret. 2 military police officers stepped forward to escort her below deck. As they turned to leave, Reinhardt's gaze swept across the formation, making deliberate eye contact with a communications officer who stood at the edge of the formation. The woman subtly tapped twice on her wristwatch. Reinhardt gave an almost imperceptible nod before being led away. Below deck, the MPs treated Reinhardt roughly, guiding her through narrow corridors where sailors flattened themselves against walls, eyes averted. No one wanted to look at the disgraced commander. No one wanted to be associated with her fall. Back on deck, Admiral Hargrove had begun addressing the assembled sailors. "Let this be a lesson to you all. The chain of command exists for a reason. When that chain is broken, when orders are questioned rather than followed, the entire structure that keeps this country safe begins to crumble." Lieutenant Caldwell stood behind him, Reinhardt's torn insignia still clutched in his hand. He leaned toward a fellow officer, whispering just loud enough to be heard by those nearby. "That's what happens when you promote diversity hires to command positions." The other officer shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Reinhardt was escorted to processing, where her military ID was confiscated and her personal effects cataloged. A young yeoman handling her paperwork flipped through her service record, eyes widening as he came across entire years redacted with a stark red stamp. Phantom Protocol. Before he could examine it further, His superior snatched the file away. "You never saw that designation," the chief petty officer said firmly, tucking the file under his arm and walking away. Reinhardt was permitted one personal call before being escorted off the ship. Instead of contacting family, she requested a secure line. The MP supervising her looked surprised, but complied. Once alone in the communications room, Reinhardt entered a 16-digit code from memory into the secure terminal. She waited exactly 30 seconds, then hung up without speaking. In his private cabin, Admiral Hargrove was pouring himself a glass of bourbon when his secure line rang. "Hargrove," he answered. "Sir, NORAD reports unusual submarine movement in your sector," came the terse reply. The Admiral set down his glass. "Define unusual." "Unknown signature, sir, not matching any profiles in our database." "Russian? Chinese?" "Negative, sir. It's not matching any known foreign signatures either." The Admiral frowned. "Keep me updated." He hung up, staring out his small porthole at the endless ocean. Beyond. Meanwhile, a junior intelligence officer named Ensign Peralta was frantically searching through classified databases. She had been present at the ceremony, and something about Commander Reinhardt's calm demeanor had struck her as odd. Her search turned up a connection between Reinhardt and a classified operation codenamed Blackfish from 7 years earlier. What was strange was that the record showed all other participants as deceased. Peralta was so engrossed in her search that she jumped when a senior officer appeared behind her. "Find anything interesting, Ensign?" She quickly closed the file. "No, sir, just routine checks." Elsewhere on the carrier, sonar operators were detecting anomalous readings that didn't match known submarine profiles. One operator removed his headphones, turning to his supervisor. "Sir, I'm picking up something approaching from the southeast, but the signature doesn't match anything in our registry." "How close?" "Approximately 3 nautical miles and closing." The supervisor frowned. "Keep tracking it. I'll notify the bridge." The communications officer who had exchanged the glance with Reinhardt earlier slipped into an empty communications room. Using credentials that should have been deactivated, she accessed a locked terminal. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, inputting a series of commands. A message appeared on screen. "Phantom protocol activated." She deleted the log entry and slipped out, her face betraying nothing. Reinhardt, now dressed in civilian clothes, was being escorted down the gangway. Sailors lined the rails, watching her departure. Some looked confused, others disappointed. A few senior officers who had served with her longest looked troubled, as if they knew something wasn't right about this very public fall from grace. At the bottom of the gangway, Reinhardt paused, looking out at the ocean with strange intensity. The wind had picked up, churning the waters around the carrier. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, as if reflecting the tension building across the ship. On the bridge, Admiral Hargrove received increasingly urgent reports. "Sir, we're detecting unauthorized communications from within the ship. Source? Unknown, sir, but they're using high-level encryption protocols." Before the Admiral could respond, another officer rushed in. "Admiral, sonar reports that unidentified vessel is now 1 nautical mile out and surfacing." The Admiral's trusted advisor, Captain Lockhart, moved to his side. "Sir," he said quietly, "do you know what Phantom Protocol actually means?" The Admiral's face revealed nothing, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the rail. "That's need to know, Captain." "With respect, sir, I think we all need to know right now." Suddenly, alarms blared across the carrier. Red warning lights flashed throughout the ship. The Admiral rushed to the windows, where an officer was pointing at radar, showing an impossible reading. "Sir, that signature, it's Phantom 7, the officer said, his voice trembling slightly. "But that submarine was decommissioned years ago." The Admiral's face went pale. "That's impossible." But the impossible was happening. Outside, chaos erupted as a massive nuclear submarine breached the surface alongside the carrier. Water cascaded off its black hull as it rose from the depths, waves crashing over the lower deck of the carrier. Every sailor who could see it froze in shock as the designation became clearly visible on the hull: Phantom 7. The Admiral stared in disbelief. "That program was terminated," he whispered. Captain Lockhart stood beside him. "Apparently not, sir." The carrier's security team scrambled, unsure whether to treat this as a hostile approach. Weapons were readied, but no order to use them came. The Admiral seemed paralyzed by the appearance of the submarine. On the bridge, communication systems suddenly overrode, with an encrypted message appearing on all screens. Authorization? Commander returned to base. Down on the pier, Reinhardt stood calmly watching the submarine, as if she had been expecting it. The wind whipped her hair around her face, but her gaze remained steady, fixed on Phantom 7 as it settled in the water beside the carrier. The carrier's sonar operators confirmed what everyone could now see. Signature matches no known vessel in our active fleet, sir. The Admiral turned to his communications officer. Get me everything we have on Phantom Protocol, now. As the officer rushed to comply, Captain Lockhart leaned in closer to the Admiral. Sir, if that's really Phantom 7, and if Reinhardt is connected to it, the Admiral cut him off. I know what it means, Captain. He looked back out at the submarine, then at the figure of Reinhardt standing alone on the pier. I think we've made a terrible mistake. Lieutenant Caldwell pushed his way onto the bridge. Sir, request permission to secure the situation. That submarine is approaching without authorization. Reinhardt must have... Lieutenant, the Admiral interrupted sharply. I suggest you stand down and observe. I'm beginning to think we don't know what we've done here today. Down below, the submarine's hatch was opening. The crew began to emerge, lining up on the deck in perfect formation. Every sailor aboard Phantom 7 stood at rigid attention, their eyes fixed not on the carrier, but on the solitary figure of Thalia Reinhardt. Reinhardt, still standing on the pier, slowly raised her hand in a gesture that wasn't quite a salute but carried the weight of one. The submarine crew saluted her in unison, the coordinated movement visible to everyone watching from the carrier. The Admiral watched through binoculars, his face growing increasingly troubled. My God, he murmured, she's Phantom Command. The communications officer who had secretly accessed the terminal earlier stepped forward on the bridge. Sir, Commander Reinhardt has been running Phantom Fleet for 9 years. 7 submarines, off books, answering only to Joint Special Operations Command. The Admiral turned to stare at her. And you know this how, Lieutenant? Because I'm her liaison, sir. The woman stood straighter. JSOC placed me here 3 years ago to maintain secure communications with Phantom Fleet. Across the deck of the carrier, sailors were abandoning their posts to witness the unprecedented scene unfolding beside their ship. A nuclear submarine that officially didn't exist had surfaced in broad daylight, its crew openly acknowledging a commander who had just been stripped of her rank. The Admiral's mind flashed back to the charges against Reinhardt. Insubordination, unauthorized command interference, breach of protocol. He had signed off on those charges based on recommendations from higher up. But now he wondered what had really happened. As if reading his thoughts, Captain Lockhart spoke quietly. Sir, I've just received word from intelligence. The charges against Commander Reinhardt weren't about standard insubordination at all. She refused to deploy Phantom 7 for a first strike operation that she believed violated international law. The Admiral's eyes widened slightly. A first strike? Against whom? That information is still classified, sir. But whatever it was, Reinhardt refused the order. Lieutenant Caldwell stepped forward again. Sir, regardless of her reasons, she disobeyed a direct order. She's being discharged for cause. We can't just let her... Lieutenant, the Admiral cut him off coldly. Unless you have operational knowledge of Phantom Protocol that I'm unaware of, I suggest you return to your station immediately. Caldwell's face flushed red, but he complied, shooting a venomous look at Reinhardt's figure on the pier below. The submarine's captain had emerged on deck and was walking to the edge nearest Reinhardt. In his hands, he held a metal case. He opened it, revealing an insignia unlike any seen in public military ceremonies. A black trident crossed with a phantom blade on a field of deepest blue. The captain pointed to the insignia, then to Reinhardt, then back to his submarine. The meaning was clear to everyone watching. Her real command had never been taken away because it had never been officially recognized in the first place. The story of what happened that day on the USS Intrepid would be told and retold by sailors for years to come. How a decorated commander was publicly disgraced, only to have her true authority revealed in the most dramatic way possible. How a classified submarine force made itself known to protect its commander. And how 5,000 sailors learned that sometimes the military hierarchy they thought they understood had shadows and depths they'd never imagined. Have you ever witnessed someone stand alone against the system only to discover they had invisible support all along? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you value stories that explore the hidden complexity behind apparent injustice, consider subscribing for more untold military narratives. Chaos erupted across the bridge of the USS Intrepid as officers tracked the approaching submarine on radar. Admiral Hargrove gripped the command rail, knuckles white, his weathered face revealing nothing to his crew as he processed the impossible situation unfolding before them. "That's impossible," he whispered, watching the submarine's signature on the radar screen. That program was terminated. The sonar operator removed his headphones, turning to face the admiral. "Signature confirmed, sir. It matches no known vessel in our active fleet or any allied navy." Security teams scrambled across the carrier, receiving conflicting orders as the chain of command struggled to determine whether to treat the submarine as hostile. Marines took defensive positions along the flight deck, while weapons systems were brought to standby. Yet no order to engage was given. On the pier below, Thalia Reinhardt stood with quiet confidence, her civilian clothes whipping in the wind as she watched the water. Unlike everyone else, she showed no surprise at the massive nuclear submarine surfacing alongside the carrier. Her stance was relaxed but alert, like a commander waiting for her vessel to come alongside. Behind her eyes flashed memories that no one else could see. A submarine control room 3 years earlier, red emergency lights casting crimson shadows across tense faces. Alarm klaxons blaring as sonar reported multiple contacts closing in around them. "Commander, we're surrounded!" a sailor had shouted above the noise, panic edging into his voice. Reinhardt's response had been calm, almost detached. Then they've made the mistake of putting all their pieces on the board at once. Now, as Phantom 7 settled in the water beside the carrier, those same memories reflected in her unwavering gaze. The wind picked up, churning the waters around the massive vessels, dark clouds gathering on the horizon, as if nature itself responded to the tension building in the standoff. Across the carrier, sailors abandoned their posts to line the rails, witnessing what many would later describe as the most surreal moment of their military careers. A submarine that officially didn't exist had surfaced in broad daylight, its designation clearly visible to all: Phantom 7. On the bridge, Admiral Hargrove turned to his communications officer. "Get me a direct line to JSOC headquarters now." As the officer rushed to comply, the Admiral's advisor, Captain Lockhart, stepped closer. "Sir, if that's really Phantom 7, and if Reinhardt is connected to it, we need to consider the implications." "I'm well aware of the implications, Captain," the Admiral replied tersely. Meanwhile, in a secured intelligence room 3 decks below, Ensign Peralta continued her frantic search through classified databases. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, bypassing security protocols that should have stopped her. On her screen appeared a file on Operation Blackfish from 7 years earlier. The mission details were heavily redacted, but one thing stood out. Every participant was listed as deceased except for Commander Thalia Reinhardt. As she scrolled further, a senior intelligence officer appeared behind her. "Find anything interesting, Ensign?" Peralta jumped, quickly minimizing the screen. "No, sir, just routine checks." The officer's eyes narrowed slightly. "I don't believe routine includes accessing files marked Phantom Protocol, Ensign." Peralta's heart raced. "Sir, I was just trying to understand what's happening with that submarine." The officer leaned in, lowering his voice. "Sometimes understanding can be dangerous, Ensign, especially when it comes to Phantom Protocol." He straightened up. "Log off that terminal immediately and report to your quarters until further notice." As Peralta reluctantly complied, the carrier's communication system suddenly overrode with an encrypted message appearing on all screens. "Authorization? Commander returned to base." The message flashed for exactly 5 seconds before disappearing, leaving no trace in the system logs. Technicians scrambled to trace its origin, but found nothing. It was as if the ship itself had decided to broadcast the message. On the bridge, Admiral Hargrove received the emergency call he'd been waiting for. "This is Admiral Hargrove. I need immediate clarification on Phantom Protocol." The voice that responded was clipped, authoritative. "Admiral, this is General Varick at Joint Special Operations Command. What you're seeing is classified beyond your current clearance. Stand down all defensive measures immediately." "With all due respect, General, I have an unidentified nuclear submarine surfaced alongside my carrier. My sailors deserve some explanation. Your sailors deserve to follow orders, Admiral. Stand down and await further instructions. The line went dead. Admiral Hargrove slammed the receiver down, turning to find Lieutenant Caldwell hovering nearby. Sir, Caldwell insisted, regardless of what that submarine is, Commander Reinhardt violated direct orders. She can't just walk away from this. The Admiral fixed him with a cold stare. Lieutenant, I'm beginning to think you have a personal interest in Commander Reinhardt's disgrace. Caldwell flushed. I only care about maintaining proper military discipline, sir. Indeed, the Admiral replied, his tone making it clear he didn't believe him. Then you'll maintain discipline by returning to your station and awaiting orders. As Caldwell retreated, Captain Lockhart approached with a tablet. Sir, I've received a priority file transfer from JSOC. It's about Commander Reinhardt. The Admiral took the tablet, his eyes widening as he scrolled through the document. My God, he murmured. She's been running Phantom Fleet for 9 years. 7 submarines, completely off books, answering only to JSOC. The communications officer who stepped forward earlier, the one who identified herself as Reinhardt's liaison, spoke up. Sir, Commander Reinhardt's missions have prevented 3 potential international crises that the public never knew about. The Admiral looked up from the tablet. And you know this how, Lieutenant? Because I was there for 2 of them, sir, before I was assigned here as liaison. The Admiral's gaze shifted back to the pier, where Reinhardt still stood watching Phantom 7. Tell me about Operation Blackfish. The lieutenant hesitated. That's beyond even my clearance, sir. All I know is that Commander Reinhardt was the only survivor. Outside, the submarine's hatch had opened. Crew members emerged, lining up in perfect formation on the deck. Every sailor aboard Phantom 7 stood at rigid attention, their eyes fixed not on the carrier, but on the solitary figure of Thalia Reinhardt. The submarine's captain emerged last, walking to the edge of the deck nearest Reinhardt. In his hands, he held a metal case. The wind gusted stronger, threatening to tear it from his grip, but he held firm. Aboard the carrier, sailors watched in stunned silence. Many had started recording with their phones, despite regulations against it. This was a moment they knew instinctively would matter, would be remembered. The submarine captain opened the metal case, revealing an insignia unlike any seen in public military ceremonies, a black trident crossed with a phantom blade on a field of deepest blue. He held it up, making sure Reinhardt could see it clearly. Then he pointed to the insignia, then to Reinhardt, then back to his submarine. The meaning was clear to everyone watching. Her real command had never been taken away because it had never been officially recognized in the first place. The silent exchange electrified the watching sailors. Whispers spread across the carrier deck. Who is she really? What's Phantom Fleet? Did you see that insignia? On the bridge, Admiral Hargrove watched through binoculars, his face growing increasingly troubled. Captain Lockhart stood beside him, reviewing the classified file. Sir, Lockhart said quietly, according to this, the charges against Commander Reinhardt weren't about standard insubordination at all. She refused to deploy Phantom 7 for a first strike operation that she believed violated international law. A first strike? The Admiral lowered his binoculars. Against whom? That information is still classified, sir, but whatever it was, Reinhardt refused the order. The Admiral's jaw tightened. So they decided to make an example of her, pull her into the light and destroy her career publicly. It appears so, sir. And they didn't expect Phantom Fleet to respond. No one expected a classified submarine to surface in front of 5,000 witnesses, sir. Lieutenant Caldwell reappeared, his face flushed with anger. Sir, request permission to take a security team to the pier and bring Commander Reinhardt back aboard for questioning. The Admiral turned, to him slowly. Denied, Lieutenant. In fact, I'm reassigning you effective immediately. Report to the communications officer for temporary duty assignment. Sir, I protest. That will be all, Lieutenant, the Admiral said firmly. As Caldwell stalked away, Captain Lockhart nodded toward the pier. Sir, something's happening. Reinhardt had raised her hand in a subtle gesture, not quite a salute, but carrying the weight of one. The submarine crew responded with a crisp, synchronized salute, a show of respect and allegiance visible to everyone watching from the carrier. The Admiral made a decision. I'm going down there. Captain, you have the bridge. Sir, regulations advise against... I'm well aware of regulations, Captain, but I think we're beyond that now. The admiral made his way down to the pier, accompanied by a single aide. As he approached Reinhardt, the wind gusted stronger, dark clouds now directly overhead. The sea churned around them, waves slapping against the pier in an angry rhythm. Reinhardt turned as he approached, her face showing no surprise. "Admiral? Commander?" He glanced at the submarine, then back to her. "It seems I've been operating with incomplete information." "Most people are, sir. Care to fill in some gaps for me?" Reinhardt considered him for a moment. "Phantom Fleet exists to handle situations that can't go through normal chains of command. Situations that require immediate action without political interference." "And Operation Blackfish?" Something flickered in Reinhardt's eyes. A shadow of old pain quickly masked. "That's still classified, sir, even from you." "What about the order you refused, the first strike?" "That order came from outside normal military channels, sir. It would have violated the Geneva Convention and likely started a war we couldn't control." The admiral nodded slowly. "So you chose to sacrifice your career rather than follow it." "I chose to protect my country and my crew, sir. My career was always secondary." Meanwhile, aboard the carrier, the communications lieutenant who had identified herself as Reinhardt's liaison accessed a secure terminal. She input a series of commands, initiating a data transfer to multiple government agencies simultaneously. As screens throughout Washington lit up with classified information about the unauthorized first strike order, she quietly logged off and disappeared into the busy corridors of the ship. Back on the pier, the submarine captain had descended to join Reinhardt and the admiral. He carried the metal case with the special insignia. "Admiral Hargrove," Reinhardt said formally, "allow me to introduce Captain Mercer of Phantom 7. The captain nodded. "Sir." "Captain?" the admiral acknowledged, eyeing the case. "That insignia isn't in any manual I've ever seen." "No, sir, and it never will be." The captain opened the case, displaying the insignia to both of them. "This belongs to Commander Reinhardt. It always has." Overhead, the dark clouds opened up, rain beginning to fall in heavy sheets. None of the three officers moved or acknowledged it. "What happens now, Commander?" the admiral asked, rain streaming down his face. Reinhardt looked back at Phantom 7, then at the carrier where thousands of sailors watched from every vantage point. "Now, we send a message, sir." "To whom?" "To anyone who would use America's military for illegal operations. To anyone who thinks they can circumvent the chain of command without consequences." The admiral considered her words carefully. "And after the message is sent?" "Phantom Fleet returns to the shadows, sir, where we belong." Aboard the carrier, Lieutenant Caldwell seethed as he watched the exchange on the pier. His reassignment to communications was clearly meant to sideline him, to keep him away from Reinhardt. He had worked too hard, pulled too many strings to orchestrate her downfall, only to watch it all unravel because of some classified submarine program. He slipped away from his assigned post, making his way to the weapons control center. The officer on duty looked up in surprise as he entered. "Lieutenant, you're not authorized to be here during alert status." Caldwell produced orders on his tablet. "Special authorization from Admiral Hargrove. We need to maintain defensive readiness against that submarine." The officer frowned, examining the orders. They appeared legitimate, though something seemed off about the authorization code. "These orders conflict with what we've been told." "The Admiral is under duress," Caldwell said urgently. "That submarine's crew has effectively taken him hostage down there. We need to be ready to act." After a moment's hesitation, the officer stepped aside, allowing Caldwell access to the weapons systems. On the pier, unaware of Caldwell's actions, Reinhardt, Captain Mercer, and Admiral Hargrove continued their discussion through the pouring rain. "Your career, Commander," the admiral said. "They've stripped you of rank. That can't be undone easily, not without revealing things that are meant to stay hidden." "My official career was always a cover, sir. What matters is my command of Phantom Fleet." Captain Mercer spoke up. "Sir, with your permission, Commander Reinhardt will be coming with us when we depart." The admiral raised an eyebrow. "And where exactly will you be going, Captain?" "That's classified, sir," Mercer replied without irony. Inside the carrier, alarms suddenly blared. The weapons officer realized what Caldwell was attempting and slammed his hand on the emergency override. "Security to weapons control, immediately!" Caldwell was tackled by security personnel before he could finish inputting the firing sequence. "She's a traitor!" he shouted as they dragged him away. "That submarine is a threat to national security." On the bridge, Captain Lockhart received the security alert. "Sir," he radioed to the admiral on the pier, "we have a situation. Lieutenant Caldwell attempted to activate weapon systems targeting Phantom 7. He's been detained." The admiral's expression darkened. "Acknowledged. Maintain security alert and conduct a full investigation into Lieutenant Caldwell's recent communications and activities." The rain continued to pour as the three officers on the pier absorbed this new development. Captain Mercer glanced at Reinhardt. "We should depart soon, Commander. Our presence has already created enough complications." Reinhardt nodded, turning back to the admiral. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to address the crew before I leave." The admiral hesitated, then nodded. "Granted, Commander. Use the carrier's PA system." Inside the carrier's communication center, Reinhardt stood before a microphone, water still dripping from her civilian clothes. She took a deep breath, then pressed the transmit button. "This is Commander Thalia Reinhardt. Many of you witnessed my public reprimand this morning. You saw my insignia torn from my uniform and heard charges of insubordination against me. What you didn't hear was the truth." Throughout the carrier, sailors stopped to listen, gathering around speakers or watching on internal video feeds. The truth is that sometimes serving your country means refusing orders that would dishonor it. Sometimes loyalty means saying no to those who would abuse power. And sometimes the most important missions are the ones that can never be acknowledged. She paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, you've witnessed something few ever will. The emergence of Phantom Fleet. What you do with that knowledge matters. Some will pressure you to forget what you saw. Others will demand you reveal every detail. I ask only that you remember this. There are men and women who serve in shadows so deep that even their sacrifices must remain unknown." In the detention center, Lieutenant Caldwell listened to the broadcast, his face contorted with rage. "She's manipulating everyone," he muttered to the guard. "She violated direct orders. She's no hero." The guard said nothing, but his expression made it clear whose side he was on. Reinhardt continued her address. "To the officers and sailors of the USS Intrepid, I say this. Honor your oaths, question orders that violate your conscience, and know that true service sometimes requires the courage to stand alone." She paused again. "Phantom 7, out." As she set down the microphone, Admiral Hargrove nodded with grudging respect. "That will give them something to think about, Commander." "That was the intention, sir." They returned to the pier where Captain Mercer waited with the metal case still open, the special insignia gleaming despite the rain. "It's time, Commander." Reinhardt nodded, then turned to the Admiral one last time. "The investigation into Lieutenant Caldwell will reveal he was working for the same people who issued the illegal strike order. I suggest you look closely at his communications over the past month." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "You knew?" "We suspected. His eagerness to tear off my insignia confirmed it." Captain Mercer extended the metal case to Reinhardt. "Commander, your insignia." With deliberate movements, Reinhardt took the black trident insignia from the case. Rather than attaching it to her civilian clothes, she simply closed her hand around it, then nodded to Captain Mercer. "Let's go home." As they turned toward the submarine, a figure came running down the pier. The communications lieutenant who had identified herself as Reinhardt's liaison. She carried a small bag, which she handed to Reinhardt without a word. The three of them boarded Phantom 7, while Admiral Hargrove and thousands of sailors watched from the carrier. The submarine's crew had already returned below decks, preparing for departure. As the hatch closed behind them, the massive black submarine began to slip beneath the waves, water cascading over its hull as it descended. Within minutes, it had disappeared completely, leaving only disturbed water as evidence it had ever been there. The rain stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Sunlight broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the carrier deck where, just hours before, Commander Thalia Reinhardt had stood in disgrace as her insignia was torn away. Admiral Hargrove returned to the bridge, soaked but resolute. "Captain Lockhart, contact JSOC. Tell them Phantom 7 has departed, and that I want a full briefing on Lieutenant Caldwell's connections to unauthorized operations." "Yes, sir. And what about the crew? They've all witnessed classified operations." The admiral looked out at his sailors, many still lining the rails, talking excitedly about what they'd seen. Sometimes the best way to protect a secret is to make it so public that no one believes it's real. By tomorrow, half the internet will be calling this a hoax or publicity stunt. And the other half, sir? The other half might remember that there are lines that shouldn't be crossed, even in war, especially in war. The admiral straightened his uniform. Now, let's find out exactly who Lieutenant Caldwell was working for. In the secure detention center, Caldwell sat alone, his career in ruins. His phone had been confiscated, but not before he'd managed to send one final encrypted message. Cover blown, Phantom Fleet confirmed, Commander escaped. The response had come seconds later. Understood. All connections severed. You're on your own. Aboard Phantom 7, Reinhardt stood in the control room, now dressed in the specialized uniform of Phantom Fleet. The black trident insignia gleamed on her chest as she reviewed their course on the navigation screens. "Welcome back, Commander," Captain Mercer said, offering her the command chair. Reinhardt nodded, taking her place. The submarine dove deeper, disappearing into ocean depths where no conventional navy could track them. She opened the bag the liaison had given her, revealing a secure tablet with mission parameters already loaded. "New orders, Commander?" "New mission, Captain," she replied, studying the screen. "It seems our friends aren't finished trying to start a war. Course." Reinhardt entered coordinates into the navigation system. North Pacific, maximum depth, silent running. As the submarine's engines hummed to life, accelerating them through the black depths, Reinhardt allowed herself one small smile. They had sent their message today. 5,000 sailors had witnessed Phantom Fleet's existence, even if most would eventually convince themselves they'd seen something else. But the people who needed to understand, those who had tried to use America's military for illegal strikes, they had received the message loud and clear. There were limits to their power. There were shadows within shadows. And in those shadows, Phantom Fleet was watching. In Washington, D.C., in a secure conference room deep beneath the Pentagon, high-ranking officials reviewed footage from the USS Intrepid, the sudden appearance of Phantom 7, the exchange on the pier, Reinhardt's address to the crew. All of it had been captured by the carrier's security cameras. "She just exposed a black program to 5,000 witnesses," one official said incredulously. "No," corrected another. "She exposed that a black program exists. The details remain classified." A shadowy figure at the head of the table paused the video on the image of Reinhardt boarding the submarine. "Commander Reinhardt just sent us a message. Phantom Fleet won't be used for preemptive strikes. The question is, do we accept her terms, or do we try to replace her?" Another official scoffed. "Replace her? Did you see what happened today? Those submarines don't answer to us. They answer to her." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. America had created a fleet that operated beyond conventional control. And today, that fleet had shown exactly where its loyalties lay. Do you believe there are secret operations protecting us that we'll never know about? Is there someone in your life who quietly does the right thing, even when it costs them everything? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to hear more untold stories of courage behind the headlines. The days following, Commander Thalia Reinhardt's dramatic departure aboard Phantom 7 transformed the USS Intrepid. What had begun as a public humiliation had evolved into something else entirely. A moment that 5,000 sailors would recount for the rest of their lives. The carrier buzzed with speculation and whispered conversations. Security officers attempted to confiscate phone recordings, but too many existed. The footage spread across military channels, then leaked to civilian networks. Admiral Hargrove stood on the bridge, watching satellite imagery of the surrounding ocean. There was no sign of Phantom 7. The submarine had vanished as completely as if it had never existed. Beside him, Captain Lockhart reviewed the preliminary investigation into Lieutenant Caldwell. "Sir," Lockhart said quietly, "Caldwell's communications over the past month show encrypted transmissions to an unmarked server hub in Virginia. NSA is tracing it now, but initial indicators suggest connections to private military contractors with government ties." The Admiral nodded. "Just as Commander Reinhardt suggested. There's more, sir. Caldwell appears to have been instrumental in pushing the charges against Reinhardt up the chain. He falsified intelligence assessments and manipulated communication logs to make it appear she was acting without authorization, when in fact, she was following her actual mandate. Yes, sir. Phantom protocol apparently supersedes standard chain of command in certain circumstances. The Admiral turned from the window. And the first strike operation she refused? Still classified, sir, but JSOC has confirmed it did not originate through proper military channels. Before the Admiral could respond, a communications officer interrupted. Sir, priority message from Washington. SECDEF is requesting immediate video conference. The Admiral straightened his uniform. Put him through in my ready room. Minutes later, Admiral Hargrove sat facing the Secretary of Defense on a secure video link. The Secretary looked grim, his face drawn with stress. Admiral, I understand you've had an eventful 24 hours. That's one way of putting it, Mr. Secretary. I need your assessment of the situation. How much damage has been done by the public emergence of this phantom fleet? The Admiral chose his words carefully. Sir, 5,000 sailors witnessed a submarine surface that officially doesn't exist. They saw its crew recognize the authority of a commander who had just been publicly stripped of rank. The footage is already spreading, despite our containment efforts. Can we dismiss it as a training exercise, some kind of demonstration? With respect, Mr. Secretary, that would only raise more questions. The nature of what happened was too authentic. The Secretary sighed. What do you recommend? Limited acknowledgement. Confirm that specialized naval units exist for classified operations without detailing Phantom Fleet specifically. Frame Commander Reinhardt's public reprimand as part of an internal review process that has been resolved. And Lieutenant Caldwell? Recommend immediate court-martial for attempted unauthorized weapons deployment and conspiracy. His actions nearly caused an international incident. The Secretary nodded slowly. Very well. I'll take your recommendations under advisement. He paused. Admiral, do you have any idea where Phantom 7 was headed? No, sir. And I suspect that's by design. After the call ended, Admiral Hargrove returned to the bridge. The carrier had resumed normal operations, but there was a different atmosphere aboard. Sailors moved with a new awareness, a sense that they had glimpsed something profound about the true nature of their service. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the footage from the Intrepid had reached the highest levels of government. In a secure situation room beneath the White House, national security advisors watched the submarine surface, saw Reinhardt's silent exchange with its captain, and heard her address to the carrier's crew. This is unprecedented, one advisor said, a black program asserting itself publicly. Not publicly, corrected another, in front of military personnel who now understand they witnessed something classified. The President's Chief of Staff leaned forward. The question is whether Commander Reinhardt was acting within her authority or not. A naval intelligence officer cleared his throat. Sir, according to the Phantom Protocol directives, Commander Reinhardt has final operational authority over her fleet. The protocol was specifically designed to create a firewall between Phantom Fleet and political pressures. That's problematic, the Chief of Staff replied. No military asset should operate without civilian oversight. With respect, sir, that's exactly why Phantom Fleet was created, to conduct operations that require military precision without political complications. The door opened and the Secretary of Defense entered, having just finished his call with Admiral Hargrove. Gentlemen, the President has made a decision. We will acknowledge the existence of specialized naval units without confirming Phantom Fleet specifically. Commander Reinhardt's reprimand will be officially rescinded as a misunderstanding, and Lieutenant Caldwell will face court-martial for his actions. And Phantom Fleet itself? Asked the Chief of Staff. We will make no attempt to recall or interfere with its current operations, the Secretary replied, his tone making it clear this was not open for debate. The President recognizes that Commander Reinhardt was acting within her mandate to refuse an unauthorized first strike operation. Aboard the USS Intrepid, Admiral Hargrove assembled the ship's officers in the main briefing room. The space was packed beyond capacity, with some officers standing along the walls. As of 800 this morning, the Admiral began, the official reprimand of Commander Thalia Reinhardt has been rescinded by direct order from the Secretary of Defense. The record will show that Commander Reinhardt acted with honor and in accordance with her duties at all times. Murmurs spread through the room. Captain Lockhart stepped forward with a tablet. Furthermore, Lieutenant Morven Caldwell has been placed under arrest, pending court-martial for falsification of intelligence, conspiracy, and attempted unauthorized weapons deployment. The Admiral surveyed the room. I know you all have questions about what you witnessed yesterday. I know there are videos and photographs circulating despite regulations. Here is what I can tell you. Specialized naval units exist to handle operations that fall outside conventional parameters. These units sometimes operate under different command structures for reasons of national security. He paused, letting his words sink in. I cannot and will not confirm the existence of something called Phantom Fleet. What I will say is this. Commander Reinhardt demonstrated the highest ideals of naval service by standing firm against orders that would have violated international law and American principles. That is all. As the officers filed out, many exchanging meaningful glances, the Admiral noticed the communications lieutenant who had identified herself as Reinhardt's liaison. He gestured for her to remain behind. When they were alone, he studied her carefully. Lieutenant, I believe you have more information about Commander Reinhardt's current whereabouts than you've shared. She met his gaze steadily. Sir, I can neither confirm nor deny any knowledge of Phantom Fleet operations. I'm not asking about Phantom Fleet. I'm asking about Commander Reinhardt. The lieutenant considered her response. Sir, Commander Reinhardt is where she needs to be, doing what only she can do. And your role in all this? I serve as liaison between conventional naval operations and specialized units when overlap is necessary. The Admiral nodded slowly. I see. Carry on, Lieutenant. As she turned to leave, he added, and if you should happen to communicate with Commander Reinhardt, tell her the Intrepid stands ready to assist if ever required. The lieutenant offered a crisp salute. I'll make sure the appropriate parties receive that message, sir. Far beneath the surface of the North Pacific, Phantom 7 moved silently through the black depths. In the submarine's control room, Commander Reinhardt studied tactical displays showing Russian naval movements near the Kamchatka Peninsula. Intelligence suggested that the same group that had tried to initiate the unauthorized first strike was now attempting to provoke a Russian response that could escalate to open conflict. Captain Mercer approached, offering a secure tablet. Update from our liaison on the Intrepid, Commander. The Admiral sends his regards and says the carrier stands ready to assist if needed. Reinhardt allowed herself a small smile. That's unexpected. Also, Lieutenant Caldwell is facing court-martial, and your reprimand has been officially rescinded. That changes nothing about our mission, Captain. No, ma'am, but it does clear your name in the official record. Reinhardt handed the tablet back. The official record has never been my primary concern. She turned back to the tactical display. What's our ETA to the target zone? 6 hours, Commander. We'll be in position by 0200. Good. Maintain silent running and prepare the Special Operations Team for deployment. As Mercer moved to carry out her orders, Reinhardt studied the mission parameters on her screen. The leaked footage from the Intrepid had created unexpected complications, but also opportunities. Their target would know Phantom Fleet. Existed now, but not where or how it operated. That uncertainty could be leveraged. She touched the black trident insignia on her chest, the true symbol of her command that so few had ever seen. In her mind, she could still hear the metallic rip of her conventional insignia being torn away on the carrier deck. That public humiliation had been meant to strip her of power and authority. Instead, it had revealed a deeper truth about where real authority resided. Back in Washington, in a nondescript office building far from the Pentagon, a group of men in expensive suits reviewed the situation with growing concern. Reinhardt was supposed to be neutralized, one man said, his voice tight with anger. The public reprimand was meant to discredit her completely. How were we supposed to know she had that kind of loyalty from her submarine crews? Another responded. Phantom Fleet was never meant to surface publicly. A third man, older than the others, leaned forward. The question now is whether she knows about our other operations. If she's identified the Russian provocation as our handiwork, she could expose the entire network. Then we need to move quickly, the first man said. Activate our assets in the North Pacific. If Phantom 7 surfaces again, I want it sunk. The older man shook his head. That would be a declaration of war against our own military. No, we need to be smarter about this. Let's use channels we still control to issue new orders to Phantom Fleet, supposedly from JSOC. Will that work after what happened on the Intrepid? It's worth trying. If Reinhardt ignores these orders too, at least we'll have created a paper trail showing she's gone rogue. Aboard the USS Intrepid, normal operations had resumed, but the atmosphere remained charged. Sailors went about their duties with an increased sense of purpose, many feeling they now understood something profound about the nature of their service that had previously been hidden. In the communications center, Reinhardt's liaison received an encrypted transmission, supposedly from JSOC. She scanned it quickly, noting discrepancies in the authentication codes. Instead of passing it through normal channels, she isolated it and forwarded it directly to Admiral Hargrove with a note. "Sir, we have a problem." The Admiral reviewed the transmission in his ready room, his expression darkening. He immediately contacted JSOC through secure channels, confirming his suspicion. The orders were fraudulent, designed to trap Reinhardt into either compliance with an illegal operation or appearing to disobey legitimate authority. "It seems Lieutenant Caldwell wasn't working alone," he told Captain Lockhart. "There's a larger effort to manipulate Phantom Fleet or discredit it entirely. How should we respond, sir?" The Admiral considered the question carefully. "Officially, we do nothing. This transmission never reached us." He locked eyes with his second-in-command. "Unofficially, I think it's time we provided some assistance to our specialized naval units. Sir, have our intelligence division compile everything we have on Russian naval movements in the North Pacific, particularly near Kamchatka, then have our liaison forward it through her channels. That would be directly supporting Phantom Fleet operations, sir." "No, Captain," the Admiral replied with a hint of a smile. "That would be routine intelligence sharing between naval assets. Nothing unusual about that." Within hours, Phantom 7 received the intelligence package from the Intrepid, along with a warning about the fraudulent orders. Commander Reinhardt reviewed the material carefully, a new plan forming in her mind. "Captain Mercer, I believe it's time we sent another message. To our Russian counterparts, Commander." "No, Captain. To the people who tried to use us to start a war." In the dark waters off Kamchatka, Russian naval vessels had gathered for exercises that were being deliberately misinterpreted by certain elements within the American intelligence community. Reports were already being prepared, claiming these were offensive preparations, justifying the first strike that Reinhardt had refused. Phantom 7 approached silently, undetectable by Russian sonar. When they reached optimal position, Reinhardt gave an unexpected order. "Surface the boat, Captain." Mercer looked surprised. "Surface, Commander? That will reveal our position to the Russians." "Exactly." The massive submarine rose from the depths, breaking the surface less than a mile from the Russian fleet. Immediate chaos erupted across Russian communications channels as their vessels went to high alert. On Phantom 7's bridge, Reinhardt activated a specialized communications system that would transmit directly to both the Russian fleet and to American intelligence satellites overhead. "This is Commander Thalia Reinhardt of the United States Navy. We are conducting authorized observation of legal Russian naval exercises in international waters. Our presence has been communicated to appropriate channels and poses no threat to Russian operations." She paused, letting the message transmit in both English and Russian. "Furthermore, we are broadcasting full sensor data from these exercises to confirm their defensive nature. Any intelligence reports characterizing these exercises as offensive preparations would constitute deliberate misinformation." The message was being received not only by the Russians and by American satellites, but also by the USS Intrepid and by JSOC headquarters. It was a masterful move. By publicly acknowledging the Russian exercises as legal and defensive, Reinhardt had effectively neutralized any attempt to characterize them as justification for a first strike. In Washington, the men who had tried to manipulate Phantom Fleet watched their carefully constructed pretext collapse in real time. "She's exposed everything," one said in disbelief. "She's broadcasting confirmation that the Russians aren't preparing offensive operations." The older man's face had gone pale. "She's not just neutralizing our operation. She's sending us a message. She knows exactly who we are and what we were planning." Back in the North Pacific, the Russian fleet had stood down from high alert after verifying Phantom 7's transmission. Their commander, Admiral Petrov, established direct communication with Reinhardt. "Commander, this is most unusual protocol," he said in accented English. "These are unusual circumstances, Admiral," Reinhardt replied. I believe certain elements are attempting to provoke conflict between our nations. I thought direct communication might prevent misunderstandings." There was a pause before Petrov responded. "We have also identified such elements on our side. Perhaps we have more in common than our governments acknowledge." "Perhaps we do, Admiral. Safe sailing." Phantom 7 slipped back beneath the waves, its mission accomplished. The attempted provocation had been neutralized, and more importantly, the people behind it had been put on notice. Phantom Fleet was watching, and it would not be manipulated into starting a war. As the submarine began its journey home, Reinhardt received a secure transmission from Admiral Hargrove. Message received and understood. Intrepid standing by if needed. 3 days later, as the USS Intrepid conducted routine operations in the Pacific, Admiral Hargrove received word that a congressional investigation had been launched into the shadow network that had attempted to manipulate military assets into unauthorized operations. Several high-ranking officials in both the intelligence community and defense contracting firms had been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation's outcome. Lieutenant Caldwell's court-martial had been expedited, resulting in a dishonorable discharge and criminal charges. His cooperation with investigators had implicated several others in the conspiracy. As for Commander Reinhardt and Phantom 7, there had been no further sightings or communications. The submarine had vanished back into the shadows from which it had emerged, yet throughout the fleet, something had changed. Sailors spoke in hushed tones about duty that went beyond following orders, about the courage required to stand against corruption, even within one's own chain of command. On the deck of the Intrepid, Admiral Hargrove found Reinhardt's liaison officer watching the sunset over the Pacific. "Any word?" he asked quietly. "No, sir," she replied, "and there won't be, unless they need us again." The Admiral nodded. "You know, Lieutenant, when I saw that submarine surface, when I realized what Commander Reinhardt had done, I understood something I've missed in 30 years of service. Sir, that sometimes the greatest act of loyalty isn't following orders. It's remembering what those orders are meant to protect." The lieutenant smiled slightly. "I believe Commander Reinhardt would agree with that assessment, sir." 1 month later, in a secure briefing room deep beneath the Pentagon, military leaders reviewed the fallout from what had now been codenamed the Intrepid Incident. The congressional investigation had uncovered a network of defense contractors, intelligence officials, and private military companies working to manipulate American military assets for profit and ideological goals. The Joint Chiefs of Staff had implemented new protocols to prevent similar manipulation in the future. And somewhere in the depths of classified archives, Phantom Protocol had been quietly updated, its mandate clarified and strengthened. At the end of the briefing, one admiral remained behind, studying photographs from the incident. The submarine surfacing beside the carrier, Reinhardt standing on the pier, the metal case containing the special insignia. A naval intelligence officer approached cautiously. "Sir, there's one more item you should be aware of. We've been monitoring chatter across various networks since the incident. There's a new phrase being used among sailors throughout the fleet." "What phrase?" "They call it the Reinhardt Standard, sir. It's being used to describe the courage to question orders that violate core principles, even at personal cost." The admiral considered this. "Is that a problem?" "Some think it could undermine discipline, sir." "Or it could strengthen the right kind of discipline," the admiral replied, "the kind that prevented a war." 6 months after the incident, a young ensign aboard a destroyer in the South China Sea noticed something unusual on sonar, a submarine signature that matched no known profile, moving silently through depths no conventional submarine could reach. When he reported it to his superior, the lieutenant simply nodded and made a single note in the log. "Phantom contact observed. No action required." The ensign looked confused. "Sir, shouldn't we report an unidentified submarine?" The lieutenant studied him for a moment. "Ensign, some things we see but don't say. Some protectors work best when their existence is just a whisper." He tapped the sonar screen where the contact had already vanished. "If you ever find yourself in a position where you have to choose between following an order and doing what's right, remember what happened on the Intrepid." Deep beneath the waves, Phantom 7 continued its silent patrol, part of a fleet that officially didn't exist, commanded by a woman whose greatest act of service had been refusing an order. Their missions would never be recorded in official histories. Their victories would never be celebrated publicly. But throughout the Navy, sailors now understood that somewhere in the depths, Phantom Fleet was watching, standing guard against threats both foreign and domestic. In her quarters aboard the submarine, Commander Thalia Reinhardt reviewed intelligence reports from around the world, identifying potential flashpoints before they could erupt into conflict. On her desk sat a small memento, the standard naval insignia that had been torn from her chest that day on the carrier deck. Beside it lay the black trident insignia that marked her true command. She picked up the torn insignia, running her finger along its jagged edge where it had been ripped away. What had been meant as the ultimate humiliation had instead become a moment of profound revelation, not just for her, but for thousands of sailors who witnessed it. There was a knock at her door. Captain Mercer entered with a secure tablet. New orders from JSOC, Commander, authenticated and verified. Reinhardt took the tablet, scanning the mission parameters. Alert the crew, Captain. We deploy in 6 hours. May I ask where we're headed, Commander? Reinhardt allowed herself a small smile. Somewhere between the lines on the map, Captain. Where we've always operated best. As Phantom 7 altered course, diving deeper into the black waters of the Pacific, Reinhardt thought about the sailors on the Intrepid who had witnessed her disgrace and then her vindication. They had seen something few ever would. The shadowy system that operated beneath the surface of official protocols, the fleet that moved through darkness to preserve the light. In naval bases around the world, the story had spread, altered in the telling, details changed or embellished, but the core truth remained. Sometimes the greatest acts of service are the ones that can never be acknowledged. Sometimes true authority comes not from rank or insignia, but from the courage to stand firm when it matters most. And sometimes, in the darkest depths of the ocean, a phantom fleet stands ready. Invisible guardians commanded by those who understand that the greatest honor isn't found in public ceremony, but in the quiet knowledge of duty fulfilled, no matter the personal cost. Have you ever had to stand alone for what was right when everyone else followed the wrong path? Or have you witnessed someone sacrifice their reputation to protect something greater than themselves? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you believe in the power of integrity even when it comes at a cost, subscribe for more stories that explore the courage behind the headlines.